Thank you all. Can you all hear me? Thank you. All right. One of your great poets, Pindar, wrote many years ago in one of his odes to the Olympic victors, "Become who you really are." How you really are. But what if that's hard, as we just heard from our dancers and singers and Gary's wonderful panel a few minutes ago? What if the time is against you? What if your country's at war? What if the economics are awful? What if you are in a deep, deep funk or depression? Then what do you do? I think that is what is, I call in my book, The Art of Pilgrimage, the pilgrim's mood. So this is a shot I did in Santorini years ago on the caldera, looking down at a wonderful sunset. And if you squint, you can see Odysseus in his boat trying to get back to Ithaca. Actually, the movie is being filmed right now, by the way. So 2,000 years of sacred pilgrimage is another way for me to say, sometimes it's difficult to find out who we really are. What move do we make if we're leading someone else's life? If we are frustrated, if we are at a crossroad. This can also happen to entire cultures. So I'm here to say, in the most encouraging, inspiring, enthusiastic way, Eleusis, Elefsina, become who you really are, which is one of the great centers of pilgrimage in world history. This is a model that isn't too idealistic. In 1970, Machu Picchu in Peru had about 10,000 visitors a year. Suddenly it decided to exploit, in the best possible way of understanding that word, exploit the wonder and the awe of ancient Peruvian history by announcing itself as a pilgrimage site. There are now 600,000 people walking the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu. Chartres Cathedral in the 1950s had maybe 10,000 people going to see this wonderful cathedral with the great stained glass windows and, was it 1,500 sculptures around the cathedral? They turned it out of the power of the Labyrinth project into a center of pilgrimage, and now 500,000 people a year are traveling to Chartres. Eleusis, Elefsina can do the same thing. But you need an image. You need a way to call people forward to say, something will happen here. Something will happen if you come. And if you go through a ritual or celebration. I had the great travel writer Pico Iyer on my TV show years ago on PBS in America. And he opened our little exchange in front of 5 cameras by saying, the great thing about pilgrimage is that it saves you from a life of abstraction. Isn't that wonderful? In other words, you put the soles of your feet to the sole of the earth. So let's go. The pilgrim mood begins in curiosity and humility. It begins in questions. This is the last painting that Paul Gauguin made. Remember, he was a fairly popular painter in Paris, but then he too underwent a kind of gray zone. He went into a deep funk, a deep melancholy, and he wrote in a journal later, I am going to Tahiti in search of a lullaby of color. His world was gray. He was seeking out color. And for the first time that I know of, anyway, in history, he wrote, if you can look in the upper left-hand corner, he was the first painter to actually write words on a major painting. And translated into English, it's where do we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? These are 3 questions that prod you on a pilgrimage. A pilgrim, then, to demystify this. We're not talking about medieval monks chanting from Stockholm all the way to Jerusalem. A pilgrim is a poet who makes journeys. Pilgrim is a wonderful word. It goes back to the Old Latin per agrum, which means through the fields. By extension, it means put down the remote at home, stop watching videos on YouTube, get on a journey somewhere that can change you and maybe change the world. And it happens in twilight. This is an image at Angkor Wat, which is what I did when I was in a pilgrim mood after my father suddenly died at age 56. I was in that mood that people have experienced, in my understanding, for about 60,000 years. That's how deep and long and extensive and all-encompassing the pilgrimage model is. That includes the Australian Aborigines on their vision quest. When people are in a spiritual crisis, You have to leave home because there are no more answers at home. Your friends can't help you anymore. Your religious leaders can't help you. Maybe even your psychotherapist is giving up on you. So this is the time to make a move. My definition is a shot from a clonmec noise, which is one of the centers of the scriptorium movement with the Irish, how the Irish saved civilization, you know that phrase. In my understanding, and this is what I want to help bring back here to Eleusis, a pilgrimage is not just a vacation where you vacate your mind. It's not just travel, which is a way to add more stamps to your passport. The pilgrimage is a spiritually transformative journey. It transforms you. You are not the same when you go home. Didn't Cicero write that? If you go through the Eleusinian Mysteries in Greece, you are never the same. You will never fear death again. You will embrace life and joy, which is a wonderful way to think about Persephone. Persephone is the embodiment, the personification of joy. And the revival is taking place all around the world. Chartres Cathedral on the left, where I lecture every other year. This is the Blue Mosque in the center here. But also I like to include, which makes my book so different, secular pilgrimage. So the image on the right is from the Ray Bradbury Museum in Indianapolis, Indiana. And that's important to me because I loved Ray Bradbury growing up. I loved baseball, basketball, and science fiction. I read everything in the hometown library by Ray Bradbury, and then they actually invited me to be with him for a few hours. So this is the typewriter on which he wrote Fahrenheit 451. And I use this slide advisedly because we are in a time of censorship. Books are being burned literally or figuratively all around the world. So pilgrimage also includes maybe walking to James Joyce's house in Dublin, like I've done, or going to Monet's gardens in Giverny. Where can you go? This is the big pilgrim question. Where can you go that will revive your spirits? If you are feeling torpid, numb, sarcastic, snarky is the big word in English these days. If you are feeling all of those moods, that's a way to say your soul is dying. And pilgrimage, either sacred or secular, is a way to wake up again. Now, here's a recent shot. It's a self-portrait, if you will, in a bubble in the gardens of the Levi Strauss Plaza in San Francisco where blue jeans were made. And it's actually a pilgrimage site. People who love blue jeans will go here. But this is an image for me of me looking, I'm looking in the fountain and there were hundreds and hundreds of bubbles and I'm in all the bubbles. It was an amazing moment. So I thought of it as useful here because what happens on the authentic, bona fide pilgrimage is that you have the time, the sacred time, and the sacred space in which to think about issues that pertain to soul and spirit that you just do not have time for at home. It's going to be next week, next month, when I have more time, when I have more space, when I have more money in the bank, then I'll think about what my real purpose or destiny is. Otherwise, we forget it. Now, my model is loosely based on a couple others. Many of you know I worked with Joseph Campbell. I wrote The Hero's Journey, the movie, and my first book was with Campbell. He based his model of the hero's journey on Arnold van Gennep. And he was an anthropologist who noticed that in rituals, including Eleusis, by the way, there was a separation from everyday time and space. You are separated. You go into an alternate reality, and then you make a descent. And the descent is into your imagination, into your soul or your spirit, and then you return a different person. And we find this in the accounts around Eleusis frequently. I am different now than when I was there before. Sophocles says, you are thrice blessed if you actually endure the mysteries. So the pilgrim's journey, here's one insight. If you remember nothing else from the talk, the pilgrim's journey is in Kairos time, not Chronos. It is not tick, tick, tick goes the clock in the clockwise pattern. That's in Chronos time. Things do not change if you are in everyday time. That's part of the power of the pilgrimage. You break time. Like Jason Robards talks about the magic of the stage. He says we need a place to dream. He was talking about his performance in Long Day's Journey into Night. We need a place to dream. So we go on stage and we break time and we break space. That is what happens on a pilgrimage. You leave home, you go either alone or, as you were asking yesterday, alone or as a group. It's two different experiences. Both are valid. What do you need now? Where can you go to help finally become yourself? And you make this descent, like in the Eleusinian Mysteries, a descent into the underworld, the understory, into the mythic realm of Hades, in the case of the mysteries here. And then you find a boon, a great word from the myths. The boon is the gift that represents some kind of significant change in your soul. And it all begins in longing. It has to be a deep longing. It's not an abstract again. Well, maybe I'll be a better person if I take the road to Jerusalem. No, it's not. It's a deep, deep longing. This is a shot from Lake Nipissing in Ontario, Canada, because I had gotten a wonderful letter from my Cousineau ancestors, or my family up in Canada, and they said, come to the Cousineau family reunion. And I thought there'd be a few of us. There were 3,000 Cousineaus when I arrived on the shores of Lake Nipissing, which is kind of shocking to see. And what we did was get into our canoes, 12 canoes. There's 17 of us who actually followed in the footsteps of our ancestors down the French River to go to this lake where my great-great-great-grandparents founded. And there is your model. I longed for connection with my family, like some people long for a connection with Demeter and Persephone, so they have to go here. They can't read about it or hear about it anymore. And then when you come, the longing is fulfilled. And a change begins. Does anybody here know Sam Cooke's great music? This is from A Change is Going to Come. He came up with this after standing next to Martin Luther King on the Mall in Washington, D.C. for the famous I Have a Dream speech. And according to the legend, Martin Luther King turns to not Sam Cooke, the great soul singer of the day, but to Bob Dylan, to sing a song to follow him. And Sam Cooke was so ashamed that he didn't have a song ready that he went home and he wrote one of the great, great anthems to human change or metamorphosis, as we heard earlier. Again, this is Kairos. If any of you ever wonder what the god looks like, this is the only known image from antiquity. Kairos is the god with wings. You know the famous Carpe Diem, seize the moment, or seize the day? The origin for that is actually with Greece and with Kairos. The original thought was seize the moment. The day is too late. Seize the moment. So he's pictured with wings. He flies in that moment and says, you've got to ask her to dance right now. This moment is not going to stretch out. Or you have to take that job. You have to follow that dream to become yourself. So he's the god of sacred time and opportunity. And this, then we're getting closer to the actual analogy here. Delphi, when I take people to Delphi on my annual tours, I always encourage them in my last email to the group, bring a question. Bring the deepest question of your life now. Should I stay in my job or should I change jobs? Should I stay in San Francisco or go to Washington, D.C.? You bring the deepest question of your life because the sacred place is the place where the soul is more alert and actually ready for some kind of encounter. We know the most famous aphorism that comes from there is Gnosis Auton, which in English means know thyself or know yourself. But what most people don't know is there were 177 of these aphorisms all around the temple. And that's only one of them. One is struggle is good, which is an interesting aphorism. Another is be good to your elders. Value the sacred moment. And so these sacred sites, as you see here, they have the purpose because they're a place where time stops. And you can ask the gods, you can ask your deep soul, what am I doing here? I'm just tossing this in because it's, I'm writing a book on Odysseus right now, The Wisdom of the Odyssey, and I was in Olympia last year, and my fellow guide said, you have to see this. The stone had been the tablet had just been discovered in the ruins of the temple of Zeus. And it's the earliest written reference that we have to the Odyssey. This goes back to the 3rd century BC. And in this passage, he talks about not knowing how to get home again, so he makes a pilgrimage to Dodona. You see what I'm leading towards here is that there is an urgency in the heart and soul. If you do not listen to that soul's call, you will hurt. You will be wounded. You will feel, I've missed the boat. There are people over there who are leading the real life. But this call, the call to the soul, is the one that you dare not resist. Now, built up to our analogy here, I believe we understand by correspondence and analogy. And here is one way over the next 10 minutes that we have here to understand Eleusis in a different way. Everywhere the Greeks lived, everywhere Greeks lived, the praises of the Eleusinian Mysteries were sung. It begins on day 1 in the Agora, actually, where there was a small temple many people don't know about, but it's called the Eleusinian. And that's where the objects for the sacred rites were stored. They were picked up here, and then you began to walk. Now, feel now the universality of these impulses. It's a different way to re-enchant where we are today, Elefsina, Eleusis. This is an engraving from the 17th century about someone leaving just outside of Paris and walking to Rome. Feel how deep the correspondence is here. Here is an image from one of the friezes on the actual Parthenon. It's the pilgrim's procession. These people are about to leave Athens for the 14-kilometer or 12-mile walk. Here's an equivalent, the correspondence. A few years ago, I was asked to co-lead a pilgrimage from Thomas Merton's Hermitage in Louisville, Kentucky, and go to Gethsemane, Kentucky, and walk 75 miles into Louisville to the Muhammad Ali Peace Center. And so we did it, 5 days, about 15 miles a day. It was a peace march, and we were supposed to meet the man himself, the boxer, Muhammad Ali. He had written to me and said, "This is such an honor. You know, I've spent my life as a man of war. I have been in the boxing ring, and now I'm a man of peace. So please end your pilgrimage at my peace center." On day 2, some of the days were different according to different scholars, but this rendition will be the next part of the pilgrimage. Once you leave, the notion in every tradition that I have studied is you have to be clean. You have to be pure. Your thoughts have to be in the sacred arena rather than in the profane. So you bathe. There are different, this is a very romanticized version, obviously. But think of, here's the equivalent of the marching. See the guy with the black cap in the center there? That's Phil Cousineau, 1975, walking 29 miles in one day on the Jerusalem March. And we were told again and again, we're not getting on a coach, we're not taking a bus, you have to struggle. You have to make some sacrifices if you are going to go to Jerusalem. There's a wonderful image in the same mood, the night walk. Would have been all night long. 3,000, some scholars go as high as 20,000. I've even read ancient Herodotus, this is histories, he said 30,000 people made the walk. Whatever the number is, hovering somewhere in between, they carried torches. They were singing, they were dancing, they were coming from grief. Like I ask people to bring questions to Delphi. When I lead tours here to Eleusis, I say, what's your grief? What was stolen from you? Like Persephone was stolen from her mother. This helps get you into the mood so you actually participate in the place. So sacrifice is represented here in a lovely little sculpture. This is one of the pilgrims, and she's carrying a baby piglet here, which is going to be sacrificed. And in case you don't know, this is one of the great etymologies of all time. Sacrifice and sacred come from the same root. There is nothing sacred without a sacrifice. You have to give up something so there's more room in the soul for something numinous to actually happen. Now think of the equivalent here. I've done 6 films on American Indian issues over the years, and this was a film I did on Quanah Parker, and this is what they call a war dancer, and his sense of focus. I look at that, and I still get a shiver after 30-some years. They were telling me that when they go on a pilgrimage, they use the expression, "We are crying for a vision." Do you feel that? That's not intellectual at all. That's visceral. There is something in me, in you, that is crying out for an actual experience of something. Here's the map. If you need a visual for it, leaving Athens, it's an all-night walk, 14 kilometers. You might arrive around dawn. And here's another equivalent here. I was filming, again, for PBS in Bodh Gaya in India. And I was introduced to this wonderful woman here who had walked for 3 months from Tibet. 3 months, that's the depth of commitment that people will have for a transformative experience. And see the eyes, the deep focus there? I've been around pilgrims in so many traditions, and they all have that look. You are in another realm for the length of that walk. Another equivalent, this is Shikoku, Japan, which again, around the 1960s, there were maybe 10,000 people a year on this pilgrimage, but once they began to announce the antiquity, that this had been a 1,000-year-long tradition to walk around Shikoku, it's now 400,000 people a year. It's like the baseball movie, Field of Dreams, if you build it, they will come. If you announce that you are actually a sacred center and you are calling out for visitors for a transformative journey, the tourists, it's not that like tourists are not welcome, but we want a transformative traveler here. Another version of this is an Aphrodisias, which is in ancient Greece in Asia Minor. This was a ritual pilgrimage to the temple of Aphrodite. Now, this is a recent shot I just found. We're talking about maybe there was sustenance in some way. Can we revive this road, the road from Athens? This is a recent drone shot, which shows you that some of the road still exists. Isn't that thrilling? I want to walk on those stones. That's the pilgrim in me. We're on the road around day 6. Here, this is a shot I took in Cape Town, South Africa, where I was making a movie there. And here's another one from Sumatra. And the smiles, the joy on the faces of our pilgrims here reminds me of this wonderful, wonderful line that can change your life. Philo of Alexandria, first century philosopher, once said, "Be kind to everyone you meet on the road, because he or she is also enduring a great struggle." If you keep that in mind, you won't honk the next time when someone cuts you off at the traffic light. That's the pilgrim mood. Be kind to people. Look at them, get their gaze, and feel the universality of this. So the all-night pilgrimage ends up here. This is one of the oldest maps of Eleusis. It's labyrinthine as this is. People were wondering about correspondence. I worked on a film about peyote, the rights for Native Americans to practice this religion, which, according to my friend, the religion historian Houston Smith, is the oldest known religion, peyote religion. It's about 10,000 years old. And we know this because peyote buttons have been found in caves along the Rio Grande. So, those were carbon dated back 10,000 years. So again, this is an ancient feeling. You see the map, this is a map of the soul. It's a yarn painting that was made by Doña Lupe here. If anybody remembers the Carlos Castaneda books, or are we dating ourselves here? The Carlos Castaneda books. This is the woman with the red kerchief was Don Juan's wife. And she's the one who initiated me into the peyote ritual. So we'll keep going here. This is the labyrinth that's outside of the cathedral in Chartres, and I use it because it's a common motif going all the way back to the Aborigines, but also we've found labyrinths on Crete, many islands, Malta, all around the world. These are maps of the soul. There is no direct straight line if you are on a journey of spiritual proportions. It's meandering. There's a wonderful phrase about the night journey. You can see some of the pilgrims actually holding the torches here. Can you imagine being in a village and watching 3,000 to 30,000 people walk by in the middle of the night with the torches, singing, anticipating what's going to happen up ahead? One of the myths is, in order to keep some proportion, the pilgrims cross a bridge just before they get here to Eleusis, and there's a woman who is burying her breasts or sometimes spreading her legs like this. The idea is, don't take your spirituality too serious. There has to be some humor about this, which gives us proportion. On the day of arrival, around day 7, some say 6, some say 8, there was something similar in all traditions. In Cambodia, they will encourage you to rise with the sun. This is one of the great pilgrimages in the world. Solomon's temple, you are encouraged on the day of arrival to go up and use your hands to touch the stones of Solomon's temple. And the metaphor for me is, you were out of touch when you left home. And you need a kind of pilgrimage like this to get what? Back in touch with your own spiritual truth. A recent shot from a Clonmec noise. This is where the Irish saved civilization. A couple images that helped. I showed these on my computer the other day. Here is one image of how grand this would be. Why would this have been such a rich site? Because in ancient traditions, it's in the Odyssey, it's in all the great writings, you never go on a visit with someone, either informally or formally, without a gift. So when the pilgrims came here, they brought tremendous gifts. Look at this. Gifts of weapons, of gold. Here's the equivalent. It's the all-night peyote ceremony there around the fire, like the sacred fire that we will see in my last couple slides here. Here we go. That's worth waiting for, right? You're wondering what happened on the last night. Great fires, singing, dancing. There is a vision to behold. It's the vision of Persephone, either played by an actress or played in your imagination. This is where you would have taken the sacred drink of Kikion, not to get high, not to disassociate, but to nudge you further to have a vision of the gods. Okay, thank you very much.
Exactly.